What's up, Royal Spartan Tribe? This is Royal Spartan 125, back for yet another great reaction. Okay, this is the town that murdered their bully? Town that murdered their bully by Count Dankula. And this has been in here for a little while. I've been meaning to do it for a little while. But it's 42 minutes long, so it's a bit long last time I was recording. So, yeah, here it is. Finally it's here. I'm excited. I'm excited for it. I haven't done a Dankula one in a while, so yeah. Alright, nothing else to say really. Let's jump in.
In criminal and forensic circles, people talk a lot about the perfect crime. A crime executed so flawlessly and so brilliantly that the perpetrators get away completely scot-free and the police have not one single shred of evidence to work with, which makes catching the perpetrators completely impossible. You would think that such a crime would require a serious amount of planning and preparation to pull off. But it turns out that that might not always be the case. Because the crime we're going to talk about today is a murder. A murder carried out in broad daylight, right in front of 60 witnesses.
What?
Yet, the murder still remains unsolved.
What?
Because all 60 of these witnesses all said that they didn't see a thing. Now, how the hell did that happen? Let's talk about the murder of Ken Rex McElroy.
Okay. I look forward to that. I do. Yes.
Ken Rex McElroy was born on the 1st of June 1934, and he was the 15th of a 16-child family. His parents made their living by travelling throughout Kansas and Missouri as tenant farmers. They eventually settled in a small town in northern Missouri called Skidmore, where Ken would stay for the rest of his life. Even when he was growing up, it was clear that Ken was destined for a life of delinquency. When he was just 15, Ken decided to just walk out of school, even though he was considered barely literate. He would spend much of his spare time hunting raccoons, not for a job or anything, he just really enjoyed killing them. But Ken soon realised that he needed to find a way to make some money. And quick. So Ken, in the tradition of many semi-literate dropouts, turned to theft. He mainly stole livestock, grain and alcohol from various farms and warehouses to then sell at a profit. And because Skidmore was a middle-of-nowhere part of Missouri, it was extremely easy for him to get away with all of these thefts and make some good money out of it. In fact, he made such a good living out of it that he was able to invest and supplement his income with more legitimate enterprises. He bred racing and hunting dogs, dealt in antiques, and he also leased out farmland that he eventually managed to acquire.
So this guy has his fingers in all the pies, yeah? Legal and illegal. Whoa. Okay. Hey, well, at least he has something to keep him busy, right?
Enterprises. He bred racing and hunting dogs, dealt in antiques, and he also leased out farmland that he eventually managed to acquire. He would routinely buy new pickup trucks, and he wouldn't face his first charge of livestock rustling until 1972. But even when he got charged with the various thefts that he committed, he would always be acquitted due to a lack of hard evidence. It was during these legal battles that Ken began to forge his thuggish reputation, In order to prevent people from going to the police, he would engage in some extreme intimidation tactics against witnesses. He would stalk his victims whilst openly armed, vandalise private property, and personally threaten other potential witnesses. There were also several instances where farm auctioneers knew for a fact that the livestock Ken was bringing in were 100% stolen. But they still let the sale go through anyway, due to them being so afraid of the retribution Ken would unleash upon them. In fact, Ken would go so far as to intimidate the police themselves. At one point, a marshal operating in the area actually made the decision to outright quit his job because of Ken.
Up at the bar one night, he caught me coming outside and pulled a gun out and was holding it there, and he asked me if I was going to testify against him. I told him I'd have to go over because I was a marshal. He said that he would believe in killing a man that wanted to put him in the pen for the rest of his life. And
were you frightened of him that night?
Yeah, I sure was. Anytime you're looking at a gun, you don't know if he's going to shoot you or what he's even thinking. He may have just been trying to scare me, but he did the job.
The sheriff, instead of arresting Ken for, literally threatening a police officer with a firearm, just told the marshal that there was nothing they could do about it. What helped even less was the fact that there was no police station in Skidmore itself. The closest station was in a town about a 20-minute drive away. So when the police actually bothered to respond to one of Ken's rampages, they took so long to get there that Ken had all but vanished by the time an officer had arrived on the scene. So basically, everyone in Skidmore was completely alone and at Ken's mercy. Some believe that Ken's violent and erratic tendencies were the result of a head injury that he suffered during one of his only legitimate jobs as a construction worker. However, the more likely explanation is that Ken just simply wanted to be intimidating so that nobody would ever openly confront him.
So this guy threatens a marshal. The sheriff says there's nothing they can do about it, and business as usual. Yeah? What? What the hell is going on here? Obviously different times, yeah? Because there's no way you get away with that now, right? One guy? I mean, you'd understand if it was like an organization of people, and, they got people everywhere. You know what I mean? One guy. One guy. I don't know. Maybe they just didn't have enough evidence, didn't have enough witnesses because everybody's getting scared. Maybe that's why they couldn't do anything about it. But if the marshal's willing to come forward and testify, or whatever, that he did this, that would be enough, right? Or maybe it wouldn't be, I don't know. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy.
His only legitimate jobs as a construction worker. However, the more likely explanation is that Ken just simply wanted to be intimidating so that nobody would ever openly confront him. But it wasn't just the thuggish behaviour that Ken was well known for. He also had a reputation for being a bit of a womanizer. Though womanizer is probably the wrong word, because it wasn't really women that Ken was interested in. In his close circle of raccoon hunting friends, he was always noted as going after young meat, as they put it. Ken was known for approaching schoolgirls from the ages of 12 to 15, offering them gifts and giving them rides in his fancy new pickup trucks. He would deliberately target girls from low-income households.
No, when he said young meat, that was shocking enough, yeah. But I was thinking maybe 14 to 16 or something like that, yeah? 12? What do you say, from 12 to 15? Or 12 to 14 or something? What? That's way worse. I mean, don't get me wrong, that sort of thing isn't appropriate any time, any age, you know, before 18. But, no.
In his fancy new pickup trucks. He would deliberately target girls from low-income households as they would be more easily swayed by his lavish displays of wealth. Ken actually married a woman when he was 18, but he eventually divorced her in order to start a harem with all of the girls that he managed to successfully groom.
What?
From here, he'd not only marry at least 4 of these young girls, but also go on to have 10 kids between them.
What?
Is everyone starting to understand why this isn't a Mad Lad video? So after hearing all of that...
Where are the parents? That's what I want to know. Did he wait till they're 18 before he married? Well, he'd have to, right? He couldn't marry a 12-year-old girl. Did he? No. No. Where are the parents? Were they just scared of him too? Oh, okay. Sorry to keep stopping it, it's just... Whoa.
Is everyone starting to understand why this isn't a Mad Lad video? So after hearing all of that, you'd think that Ken couldn't be more of a repugnant scumbag than he already was.
Yeah.
But no, he in fact, he gets so much worse.
What?
Following true stereotypical redneck fashion, Ken McElroy also abused his underage partners in every way possible. He would threaten to kill the girls' parents if they didn't have sex with him. And when they did have sex, it was described as a deliberately violent and demeaning experience. He was also known to beat the girls severely whenever he got angry. And whenever the parents tried to rescue their children from his abuse, Ken would either attempt to bribe or threaten them into keeping quiet.
What?
So that pretty much sums up Ken in a nutshell. But I think the only way to show what he was really like is to go over the most infamous stories that we know about him. And the first...
There I go, stopping it again, but I can't help it. I don't have kids, yeah? I don't have kids. I don't know what I'd do in that situation. I'd like to think I know what I'd do, but if you got a kid, right, a little girl, say she's like, what, 14 or something? Younger, maybe? Even older. And that's happening to her, you know what's happening to her, you're trying to rescue her. You let him threaten you? Would you be like, oh, he threatened me, oh, I better back off? What? No. I'm starting to understand why what happened to him, yeah? I'm starting to get it. People just get sick of it, you know what I mean? They just get to a point, the boiling point where they just can't take it anymore. But this is one guy. One guy in a community. Why this didn't happen sooner? Or something, why they didn't just fight back sooner, I don't know. One guy? I mean, this is like this. You said like redneck, right? This must be like, this is the United States, where most people have guns. I suppose in the South, especially, you hear about people having guns all the time. So none of these parents have guns. None of these parents can just walk in and go, boom, I'm taking my kid back. Let's go. You know what I mean? All the stuff he's been doing all this time, he hasn't been arrested. The police can't do anything. I don't know. Maybe it's wrong for me to say that. I don't know. But it's shocking to hear that one guy could get away with this. Yeah?
In a nutshell. But I think the only way to show what he was really like is to go over the most infamous stories that we know about him. And the first of these stories as the Trina McLeod affair. Trina McLeod was a 12-year-old girl that Ken had first met when he was 35 years old, and he already had 2 young girls living with him at the time. In order for her parents to not suspect anything, Ken actually hired a boy to pretend that he was Trina's boyfriend, who would then escort her to Ken's house and back again. But eventually, Ken just ditched the cover act and just started picking up Trina from school himself. The school board later admitted that they had heard rumours about what was happening between Ken and Trina, but said that they didn't have enough evidence to act.
You gotta be kidding.
I have a feeling that there was plenty of evidence,
Yeah.
and the real reason that they didn't do anything is because the pussies were scared of Ken.
Yes, pretty much.
When Trina was 14 years old, she fell pregnant with one of Ken's children. So Ken convinced her to drop out of school and move in with him, replacing one of the girls who had earlier left his Jimmy Savile Playboy mansion. Despite being pregnant, this didn't spare Trina from the regular beatings or molestations
God.
that she would receive from Ken. It got so bad that by the time Trina gave birth to her first child, both she and the other girl living with Ken fled to Trina's parents' house. However, Ken was able to track both of them down, and when Trina's parents were away from the house, Ken barged in and dragged the 2 girls back to his home.
What?
As punishment for this, Ken beat the other girl to a pulp and made Trina do humiliating strip dances and perform demeaning sex acts. Afterwards, he drove them back to Trina's parents' house and made them watch as he shot the family dog and burned the house down. However, things were potentially looking up for Trina when her baby had taken ill and went to a doctor. Throughout the checkup, the doctor noticed that Trina looked very distressed, and he managed to convince her to tell him what was.
How could an entire community let this go on so long as it did? I mean, I'm not a tough guy. You know what I mean? I'm not one of these people who goes out looking for a fight. I'm not one of those. But no. Someone comes shoot your dog, molests your child, beats her. Yeah? Beats her when she's pregnant. Makes her do all this horrible stuff. Comes to your house, drops her off afterwards, shoots your dog, burns your house down, and you just let it happen? You just let it happen? I mean, I got it. He's got a gun. Yeah, okay, fair enough. But what? Huh? What? I mean, an entire community of people. I assume it's a small town. Yeah. My God. How? I don't get it. I just don't get it. Obviously different times, yeah, but it couldn't be that different.
However, things were potentially looking up for Trina when her baby had taken ill and went to a doctor. Throughout the checkup, the doctor noticed that Trina looked very distressed, and he managed to convince her to tell him what was wrong. After she told him everything that Ken had done to her, the doctor immediately contacted social services to place her and the baby into protective foster care. Ken, being the type of man to not let things go so easily, soon began to harass Trina and her new foster parents. He would stare into their house armed with a shotgun, and he would make frequent threatening phone calls. At one point, Ken even called the foster parents and offered them an exchange of girl for girl, by heavily implying that he knew where the foster parents' own biological daughter went to school.
Whoa.
And he would have made no issue of abducting her if he didn't get Trina back. By today's standards, this alone would have been more than enough to lock Ken up for criminal harassment. Unfortunately, Missouri state law didn't actually have a criminal charge for this at the time. So despite the foster parents repeatedly calling the police and telling them what was going on,
Yeah.
the police said they couldn't do anything about it, as Ken wasn't invading their house, acting maliciously, or actively shooting at the property itself. It seems that at this point in history, the bar for the police to actually do something was set pretty damn high. The foster parents, despite all of the intimidation and threats that they got, never gave Trina up to Ken, though they could tell that the constant harassment was rapidly deteriorating Trina's mental health.
Yeah.
After a whole year of this, it seemed that everything had been getting too much for Trina, and she announced to her foster parents that she decided to move in with her grandmother. Though this obviously made the foster parents very upset and also suspicious that Ken had some part in this, they couldn't force her to stay, and so they said their goodbyes.
Those were good people.
Upon reaching her grandmother's house, Trina then met back up with Ken and returned to his house shortly afterwards. As all of this was going on, Ken was facing serious charges for arson, assault, and statutory rape on the basis of Trina's testimony. He had managed to escape jail time for the first two charges by paying a $2,500 bail, but he still had the statutory rape charge hanging over his head. For the first time in his life, there was a serious chance of Ken actually going to jail for a long time. However, because Trina was now back living with Ken, he found a loophole. Marriage. At the time, key witnesses in Missouri criminal cases could not be compelled to testify if the defendant was closely related to them. And as Trina was the only key witness to the statutory rape charge, conducting a quick marriage ceremony would counter the prosecution's request to have Trina testify against Ken. So Ken did it. He managed to escape 3 serious charges through buying, intimidating, and marrying his way out of it.
So, makes me wonder, what age is she at this point? Right? What age is she at this point? Because they placed her and her child in foster care, yeah? Which means she must still be underage. So what is the marrying age for in Missouri for at that time? Must be pretty young, right? How could he marry her if she's underage? I don't know. Depends. I mean, some places have like 16 you get married, 17. I couldn't see it being any younger than that. That's insane, no. Whew. The fact he could get away with all this for as long as he did, that's crazy.
Counter the prosecution's request to have Trina testify against Ken. So Ken did it. He managed to escape 3 serious charges through buying, intimidating, and marrying his way out of it. And you'd think that after barely saving himself from serious jail time, that he would be more careful as to how he acted in public. Nope. This leads us into our second story, which involved Ken's altercation with a local farmer called Romaine Henry. On the 27th of July 1976, Ken drove to Romaine's farmland and fired 2 shotgun blasts into the air. Upon hearing the shots, Romaine drove to the entrance of his farm to see what was going on. And there, he encountered Ken standing just off the road of his property with a shotgun in his hands. Ken then proceeded to shout at Romaine and, without a hint of irony, accused Romaine of stalking. After Romaine had made a bewildered response to these allegations, Ken just pointed his shotgun at Romaine's stomach and fired.
He said, "Well, you're a lying SOB," and when he said that, well, then he more or less laid the barrel of that shotgun right against my stomach and pulled the trigger. And when he did, why, Of course, it laid my flesh all open and blew my flesh into this door here.
Another shot hit Henry in the face. While the gunman was reloading, Henry managed to drive away.
Thankfully, Romaine's wounds weren't life-threatening, and he managed to drive away to safety when Ken's shotgun jammed. After the attack, the police were called and once again took Ken into custody. I mean, this time, he had to get jailed.
Yeah.
You couldn't get a more straightforward case if you tried.
You'd think
However,
so.
delays to the trial meant that for several months, Ken would continually harass and intimidate Romaine, as well as any other potential witnesses for the case. However, the trial eventually resumed, and Romaine managed to get 2 witnesses to back up his story. But
Nice.
Ken also
What?
had 2 witnesses.
Huh?
He managed to wrangle 2 of his raccoon hunting buddies to testify that he was actually with them during the time of the shooting. And because of this conflict of evidence, the jury felt that they had no other option than to acquit Ken of the charges. After the trial, Ken grew so brazen that he would publicly brag about how he managed to avoid prosecution and that he was actually surprised that he didn't manage to kill Romaine to begin with.
When he shot the dirty son of a bitch, that was Romaine Henry, he thought he had him shot deep enough that he'd die before he got home.
He told you that?
He told me that himself just last winter. And his brother...
Why didn't you come forward?
What for? Why should I tell that when they made such a fool out of the man that they shot?
It's easy to get the impression that these cases were just another oversight of the Missouri justice system, and that Ken won his cases purely through luck and intimidation. But no, it turns out that he got some help. And the man who gave him that help was a lawyer called Richard McFadden. McFadden was a criminal defense lawyer based in Kansas City. He apparently had connections to the mob operating in the area, connections that, when asked about them, he didn't deny. So on those grounds, Ken was basically the perfect client for him. McFadden and Ken made a deal where Ken would pay $5,000 for each charge brought against him, and McFadden would employ every dirty tactic within the bounds of the law to get Ken out of jail. McFadden's common tactic would be to split charges into separate trials and constantly shift court venues and dates around. This would allow time for Ken to sort out things on his end, and it would enable McFadden to employ numerous legal technicalities to get Ken acquitted. So the numerous delays in the Romaine case were due to McFadden's deliberately obtuse scheduling and Ken's decision to marry Trina to avoid the statutory rape charge was also thanks to McFadden's advice. In fact, McFadden was so proud of his little marriage scheme that he actually called up the prosecutor to gloat that he no longer had a case against Ken and that he had basically won.
What?
McFadden was Ken's go-to lawyer, and he would manage to get Ken acquitted from all of the 22 cases brought against him. However,
22?
There was eventually an incident that would not only end McFadden's winning streak, but spell the end of Ken's iron grip on the town of Skidmore. The incident in question was Ken's feud with an elderly couple called the Bowenkamps. Ernest and Lois Bowenkamp owned a convenience store in Skidmore and were both gearing up for retirement after having moved to the town in 1975. On the 25th of April, 1980, several of Ken's kids made their routine trip to the Bowenkamp store. What happened next is slightly up for debate, but the story most commonly believed is that the Bowenkamps gently reminded the kids to pay for a bar of chocolate that they forgot to hand over to the counter. After this, the youngest girl cried, and the group of kids all stormed out, swearing retribution upon the Bowenkamps. But according to the Bowenkamps' daughters, it was actually one of Ken's eldest daughters who initially grabbed the chocolate bar out of her younger sister's hands and told her that she couldn't have it, with the younger sister then crying about it. The older sister would have then told Ken that they were accused of shoplifting by the Bowenkamps in order to avoid being punished for making her sister cry. But regardless, Ken now apparently had a score to settle. So less than an hour later, he marched into the Bowenkamp store armed with a switchblade. And despite the initial heated confrontation, the Bowenkamps actually managed to explain the situation and calm Ken and Trina down. As a peace offering, Ken tried to order some cigarettes, but understandably furious about the scene his family had caused over nothing, Ernest Bowenkamp refused and told Ken that he and his family were no longer welcome at the shop. And so the feud began. Over the next few months, Ken would commit to his usual stalking tactics, but soon began escalating things further than ever before. He sent a letter offering $100 if Lewis and Trina fought each other in the street. He also started pulling up to the Bowenkamp's house to fire shotgun rounds just above the roof before driving back home again. The police were again called and again offered no help, as these actions were still apparently not enough to get Ken in
useless,
jail.
that's what they are.
In fact, a Nodaway County Sheriff called Robert Cronk even promised to forward the Bowenkamp's report to the prosecutor, only to completely go back on his promise and not even record the incident to begin with. Tensions finally...
Who else thinks that these police officers, whoever they are, the sheriff's office or whatever, are in his pocket? I mean, that's what it's starting to look like. You know what I mean? Oh, I conveniently forgot to keep my word and send this to the prosecutor. No. It's like they just don't care. You know what I mean? It's like, is he like paying them off on the side or something? That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. It's a possibility. I don't know. That's crazy though.
Camp's report to the prosecutor, only to completely go back on his promise and not even record the incident to begin with. Tensions finally reached their peak on the 8th of July 1980, when Ernest was cutting up boxes at the rear entrance of his store. Ken confronted Ernest and began pointing a shotgun at him. Ernest began moving away from Ken, and just at that moment, Ken pulled the trigger.
While I was looking down the double-barrel shotgun. And I thought to myself, now is he going to shoot or is he just going to scare me? So I thought if he's going to shoot, I better dodge over. So I dodged over just in time. He got released from my neck. And that's all that story, because I was out the rest of the time.
Thankfully, Ernest managed to survive this attack because the shotgun blast just grazed his neck, and he managed to recover in hospital from the trauma and blood loss. The police immediately knew who to look for and started hunting Ken down. They eventually caught him and brought him to court to face the charge of assault. I think trying to blow someone away with a shotgun is a bit more than assault, but
yeah,
whatever. Despite all of McFadden's usual attempts to delay court proceedings and Ken's usual intimidation of witnesses, on the 25th of June, 1981, the jury made a decision. Guilty. The jury found him guilty.
Finally.
Ken, after all these years, was finally going to jail. However, there was a catch. Because there was no official record of Ken's intimidating behaviour or history of violence. Now, how the hell was that? Well, it's because despite the hundreds of times the townsfolk had reported him to the police, the police just decided not to record any of these incidents, which is why there was no record of Ken's history. And because of this, the jury only settled on a 2-year sentence. And what was worse is that McFadden arranged for an appeal, and the judge had agreed to extend Ken's bail until the retrial.
What the hell?
The town was still stuck with him. A few days after his sentencing, Ken walked into a bar that he frequently visited in the town called the D&G Tavern, while carrying an M1 Garand with an affixed bayonet. He then proceeded to load the gun and graphically document to the surrounding patrons as to how he was going to shoot and gut Ernest like a turkey for getting him sent to jail. This obviously directly violated Ken's bail conditions, and a few of the townspeople submitted a written account to the prosecutor detailing what had happened. Despite the prosecutor trying his best to lock Ken up right away, since Ken's retrial was in just 5 days, the court decided there was no point in locking him up now, and they should just wait the 5 days.
Are these people just complete clowns? Is that what it is? Are they paid not to care? 'Cause that's what it looks like. Honestly, that's what it looks like.
But thanks to McFadden's interference, that 5-day wait turned into a 10-day wait when the court announced another delay to the appeal on the 10th of July, 1981. The townspeople got so frightened that a group of 60 locals met at the town hall to discuss how they could best protect themselves and the witnesses.
Here it comes.
A county sheriff called Danny Estes agreed to drive over from Maryville to advise the townspeople on the best legal way to do this. Apparently, Ken caught wind of what was happening, so he deliberately drove by the town hall before parking his truck outside the D&G bar to further intimidate the townspeople and generally gloat about his continued freedom. After what seemed to be an unproductive meeting, the townspeople began to leave the hall and the sheriff drove back to his office in Maryville. When the sheriff had gone, the townspeople then flooded into the D&G Tavern, as they knew that's where Ken was. What happened next was about an hour's worth of tense observation of Ken by the Skidmore residents. Some tried to pretend that they were just there to order some drinks, whilst others were so transfixed out of fear and anger that they just stood there and stared at him. Eventually, Ken decided it was time to go home, so he ordered a 6-pack of beer for the road and escorted Trina back to his truck, walking through the massive crowd of residents outside the bar. Ken was smirking at all of them as he walked through them, because he knew how angry they all were that he was still free. And I think it was this smirk that was the last straw. Ken got into his truck and was just about to light a cigarette when several shots were fired and Ken slumped over onto the wheel. Dead. Nice.
Yep.
Seemingly out of nowhere, a random person in the crowd had aimed a rifle and fired at Ken whilst he was sitting in the truck. In fact, there may have been more than one shooter involved, as casings from a German World War I rifle and a revolver were found at the scene. Despite Trina being present at the shooting, screaming at the crowd to call an ambulance, the townsfolk refused.
Yeah.
And by the time the police arrived, all the townsfolk had scattered home. A year-long investigation was then conducted by state and federal criminal investigators to determine who was responsible.
Let me get this straight. After all the stuff this guy did, the police, the sheriff's office refused to get involved, all this stuff, and then something happens to him, and suddenly there's a big investigation. I mean, I get it. It's murder. What he did was intimidation, witness tampering, assault, attempted murder. I mean, I get it. Murder is a far more serious charge than anything he did, pretty much, right? But at the same time, townsfolk get no help from the law keepers. But as soon as something happens to him, big investigation. This is insane. It's like upside down world. Yeah? That's what this is.
Conducted by state and federal criminal investigators to determine who was responsible for killing Ken McElroy. However, despite there being 35 primary leads and 100 interviews conducted, with 60 of those interviews being of the townsfolk who were physically right there in the crowd, every single one of them said, "I didn't see who shot him." Some of them were even bold enough to say, "What shooting? I didn't see no shooting." The only person interviewed who claimed to know the identity of the shooter was Ken's wife, Trina. Now, how can that be? How can that be? How can none of them have saw who killed Ken McElroy? Well, it's because they're all fucking lying. You know every single one of them are lying.
Yeah.
They were all looking right at Ken as he gets shot, and you know for a fact that when he got shot, every single one of them would have turned around to see who did it, right?
Yeah.
Not a single person in that crowd thought to themselves, well, it looks like Ken's being murdered right in front of me by a man standing right beside me, but I can't think of a good enough reason to look to my left right now. Liability couldn't even be placed on all 60 of the townsfolk collectively, as Sheriff Estes testified that the prospect of killing Ken didn't exactly come up during the town meeting, thus absolving the group of a conspiracy charge.
Oh, look at that. Once again, the police didn't do their jobs. Shocker. I'm so surprised. Why do they even have police in that place? Why did this sheriff's office even exist? You know what I mean? Why? What function do they do? You know what I mean? Are they just there for show? Is it just like oh, here's a sheriff's office. I'm moving on. Yeah. They just sit about all day reading newspapers, drinking coffee, eating donuts. They don't actually do any police work. They're just there in the hopes that their presence alone will stop people from committing crimes. That's what it's starting to look like.
Couldn't even be placed on all 60 of the townsfolk collectively, as Sheriff Estes testified that the prospect of killing Ken didn't exactly come up during the town meeting, thus absolving the group of a conspiracy charge. But you know for a fact that after the meeting, when they were all watching Ken drinking in the bar, you know there was some conspiring going on.
Yes.
Though Trina named a farmer called Del Clement as the man responsible for the shooting, though there could have been multiple shooters, Del Clement was the only one she actually seen. There was no corroborating evidence or witness testimony to back up this claim. The witnesses probably screwed with the feds to protect Del Clement, being like, okay, I didn't see who killed Ken McElroy.
Maybe after he was dead, the townsfolk hired the lawyer McFadden to to defend them. Wouldn't that be poetic? Yeah, that would be perfect. But I'm willing to bet that at this point, the girl Trina isn't very popular in the town anymore. Yeah. Yeah, she's pretty much conspired with him. She's helped him. You know what I mean? And now she's trying to turn against the town by saying, "Oh, such and such did this to him," and I guess she's a victim too, but she's also a collaborator. Yeah, she's his wife. She's the mother of his children. I get it. None of these things were really her choice. Sort of. I mean, yeah, she made choices, but she was young. You know, she was scared. I get it. But at this point, even after he's gone, she's still trying to get these people put behind bars, you know?
The only one she actually seen. There was no corroborating evidence or witness testimony to back up this claim. The witnesses probably screwed with the feds to protect Del Clement, being like, okay, I didn't see who killed Ken McElroy because I was far too busy looking at Del Clement, who was standing there doing absolutely nothing and definitely not killing Ken McElroy. Okay, I know that sounds strange. I know it sounds strange that I would be more focused on a man who was doing absolutely nothing and definitely doing absolutely nothing, instead of focusing on the man who is literally murdering someone right next to me. That sounds really strange, I know. But all we remember from that day is that Del Clement definitely did nothing. Isn't that right, boys? Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry, officer. I wish we could be of more help. So, in 1982, the federal and state authorities had no choice but to close the case without a conviction. This wasn't the end of legal action entirely, however. In 1984, and on behalf of Trina, McFadden sued Sheriff Estes, the local county, and Del Clement for $5 million in compensation for wrongful death caused by civil negligence. All parties agreed to a settlement of $17,600 on the condition that nobody was attributed blame for the killing. Those paying up denied any kind of cover-up and instead argued that paying the $17,000 was much cheaper than defending themselves in an ultimately futile case. What's quite strange is that despite all of the torment that Ken had quite clearly put her through, Trina was more than willing to stick up for him after his death. Stockholm Syndrome is a very real thing.
Yeah.
I've known him all my life, besides the 7 years I've been married with him, and he was never that way. He never caused no trouble with nobody.
What?
You know, he was a good man.
What about the bowling camps?
I wasn't with him that day. You know, I couldn't answer for that. I do know it was self-defense.
His wife, Trina, is either his third or fourth wife. They began seeing each other 10 years ago when she was 14. At 16, she accused him of rape.
Yes, he was charged with it, but it's not true.
You brought the charge against him?
Yes, and it's not true.
Why did you do it?
Jealousy. I was jealous over him, but it's not true. He never had to do anything like that in the first place.
Though it would be extremely easy to pin this on some kind of personal misjudgment or lust for money, it's worth remembering that many victims of domestic abuse tend to form a kind of emotional dependency on their abusers, even years after being in a relationship with them. I think this is probably the best explanation for why Trina acted in the way that she did leading up to and after Ken's death. What's less excusable, meanwhile, is Ken's lawyer continuing to stick up for him. McFadden would defend Ken as a good and honest man who was simply misunderstood and vilified by his local community. Oh, the poor wee baby. Prick.
Ken Rex McElroy was a perfect gentleman. He was a good client.
He sure needed a lawyer an awful lot.
Yes, and I asked him about that, and he said, well, it's a set of circumstances. He says they're trying to get me, they're harassing me. I didn't do it.
But he did have a reputation for violence. He was known as the Jesse James of Northwest Missouri.
I have heard him called the Jesse James of the northwest part of Missouri. That is correct.
Well, he wasn't. So he might not have been the perfect gentleman that you just said he was.
I say only in his relationship with me. He was a fearless type person.
If that isn't enough to showcase what an actual scumbag this guy was,
Yeah.
there was a book called In Broad Daylight, written by the author Harry McLean. In this book, McLean exposed all of the dirty tactics McFadden used to get Ken out of jail for his numerous crimes. Instead of feeling ashamed or humiliated about it, McFadden actually got McLean to personally sign numerous copies of the book and sent one to each and every member of the Missouri state legislators. Until his death, McFadden embraced the hatred he got and saw it as a compliment to his skill as a lawyer.
Wow.
No, you were just a giant piece of shit. As for
Yes.
the townspeople's reaction to Ken's murder, they couldn't have been happier. and when they were asked about why they seemed so disinterested in bringing Ken's murderer to justice, one of the townsfolk gave this amazing quote. "Nobody tries to hang a scientist for finding a way to kill a germ."
That's a good point.
However, there are some townspeople who disagreed with what happened. They were still in favour of Ken getting killed, but they decried the fact that it happened in broad daylight so publicly.
Yeah.
They believe that the shooting tainted the reputation of the town forever and that the killers should have gone about it in a more subtle way. I mean, like,
What?
really, like, yeah, we want him dead, but, you know, don't do it in a way that makes the town look bad. Think about what it might do to tourism. The town of Skidmore was in noticeable decline even when Ken was still around, but it has decayed even more since his death. There are no amenities, schools, or even gas stations in the area, and the population has decreased from around 400 to less than 300 over the past few decades. Many people attribute this decline to the dark blot on the town's reputation that Ken's unsolved murder had brought about. They felt that the murder had become the town's dirty little secret.
Yeah, because the person committing most of the crimes in the town being murdered is the worst thing that happened there, yeah? Yeah, you think after he was gone things would actually pick up? Yeah. Not get worse? No, I don't think that was the reason. I don't know what it is, but maybe these small towns they just waste away. Young people move away, you know, they want bigger, better things, and it's just, the place just goes into decline, you know? Happens to small towns all the time. All the time. Yes, it does.
Around 400 to less than 300 over the past few decades. Many people attribute this decline to the dark blot on the town's reputation that Ken's unsolved murder had brought about. They felt that the murder had become the town's dirty little secret. But in reality, the town's real reason for failing is simply due to more young people migrating to more developed parts of Missouri or to other states entirely. What's truly amazing about this story isn't how awful Ken was or how much the legal system completely failed to protect the residents of Skidmore. What is truly amazing is that without any prior collusion, at least that we know of, an entire town, without saying a word to each other, all agreed to say absolutely nothing about what they saw.
How come no witnesses?
Everybody dived for cover?
At least 5 shots fired.
Depends who you talk to.
Are you surprised that there are no witnesses?
No. No.
Those who were actually there and witnessed the event take particular offence whenever the media frames the murder as a vigilante killing. They prefer to frame the murder as a result of law and order completely breaking down and the only means of keeping their community safe from a dangerous and potentially murderous psychopath. It really shows that when law and order completely breaks down, people who would ordinarily be peaceful and law-abiding citizens will turn to extreme measures when they have been repeatedly let down by the system that they believed would protect them from people like Ken. There has, of course, been a number of movies, books and documentaries made, all attempting to uncover the secret of what really happened outside the D&G Tavern that day. None of them have gotten any closer to the truth, and the residents of the town are clearly more than happy to keep it that way. Yeah. I'm not, though. I would like to know the identity of who did it. Not because I want to see the guy's reputation ruined or see him thrown in jail. I just want to buy the man a drink.
It's Count Dankula on YouTube! Everybody should subscribe!
Okay. That is the end of the video. That was a good one. That was a very good one. Thank you for requesting it. Whoever it was. It was a while ago. And until next time, I am out of here.